Originally, I began reading Chainsaw Man because of the breathtaking trailer dropped by Studio Mappa, but as I read through it, I saw exactly why everyone is talking about this series. It has action, it has gore, it has a story, but not only comical, but touching. There are so many elements that makes this shonen what it is. So with that, I'm your host, Vro, and welcome to the review of Volume 1 of Chainsaw Man. Immediately, the first thing I notice is how different Chapter 1 begins. The protagonist Denji is seen with an eye patch and missing organs. Someone really and truly down on his luck. Typically, I expect shonen to start off with a hero as a bit of an underdog, but not. Denji only has physical problems, but also is massive in depth. His money situation is so bad that he resorts to only eating a single slice of bread. His start is marked with a stripe, but there is also a lack of a big bad at first. Sure, there's an introduction to the devils, supernatural creatures that Denji is employed to hunt. However, there is no intimidating rival to Denji. He is merely a young man stuck with his old man's debt, and honestly, that's what drew me to his character. Denji isn't a Naruto or Luffy, he is simply Denji. And that being said, there is a particular delight with his relations with Pachita and Denji. They have a very typical companionship you expect with a man and his chainsaw devil dog. The lengths of Denji goes to provide for himself, and Panchita is admirable to go extreme. Again, he lost an eye, he lost organs, he even eats cigarettes in order to pay for food. The kindness of his character is front and center and made very clear as early as Chapter 1. On the topic of Pochita, there's a bittersweetness to their dynamic. The day Denji's father dies, effectively leaving him with his death, is also the day that he meets Pochita. Even further, it goes to show how exactly lonely Denji truly is. His only friend is a devil, something that will only align him further from society. However, this doesn't stop Denji from having dreams. He doesn't have any special or big dreams. No, Denji dreams of jam with sliced bread and flirting with a girl. His words and especially actions really ground him as rather a human character. Typically, it takes me a while to like the main character, but Denji grew on me rather fast in the first chapter. He appears as any other teenager, which perhaps more relatable than I thought. That aside, Chapter 1 has one scene that pays no rent, that lives in my head for free. I'm talking about the moment that Zombie Devil is first seen. This particular panel is where I knew the manga is going to be the visual threat. The care for details combined with the absolute horror of Zombie Devil and its minions. I describe myself as an absolute fan of horror, and boy, this scene scratched an itch. It's gruesome and amazing well done art. Nonetheless, let's switch back to a certain moment that had my jaw dropping. Denji dies. The protagonist outright kicks the bucket in Chapter 1. I know earlier I said this manga is different, but this was downright quirky. I don't often read manga that has main characters KOing so early, but it's somewhat refreshing. He is not some unkillable force, yet he doesn't stay for long. Through the literal power of friendship, Panchita sacrificed himself, becoming Denji's heart. It's a moment that has some significance to me. They managed to have a powerful bond between one another. Denji saves a wounded Panchita and Panchita saves a dead Denji. Still, there's a catch to their union. Panchita will give Denji a heart, but in exchange, he must achieve his dreams. This scene was touching, their softness to a devil wanting to help a human. Perhaps it's even a hint that a common ground between the two. Now more about the art. Chapter 1 is pure eye candy to me. The visual depiction of the Zombie Devil minions are truly badass. Not to mention the action panels. How can I forget the action panels of Chapter 1? They show such fluidity. It's in 2D, it's not even moving, but the art speaks for itself. Through the gory Doom battle, I'm still able to keep up with the motion. There isn't any confusion here, only admiration. Chapter 1 does a spectacular job of showcasing the talent of Tatsuki Fujimoto. The 2-page spread of Denji laughing maniacally atop Zombie Devil's minions continues to live in my head. However, Chapter 1 does introduce a new character that I don't particularly care for. Makima, and her introduction shows how clearly off she is. Makima gives a post-transformed Denji an ultimatum to be killed as a devil by her or be even taken as a pet by her as a human. Right away, she dehumanized Denji by going as far to refer him like a dog. It's an aspect of her character that is simply unlikable, but I believe that's intentional. Despite that, her eyes are very aesthetically pleasing. She truly stands out in the world. Now let's talk about Chapter 2. This chapter has sort of a sweet start. Denji is practically smitten with Makima. He even declares to be in love with her, something that I fear that won't end well. To be frank, his influence with her annoys me to a degree. Makima from the start isn't a nice woman, and Chapter 2 further cements this. And there is a theme, and I can see it forming, the concept of obedience and loyalty. Hell, she even tells Denji to wolf. In her eyes, he's nothing but a tool. It's a dynamic that makes me further feel for Denji. This sparrow-eyed woman is perhaps the first person to show him any kindness. Of course he's going to fall hard. Again, there's a bittersweetness to it. I love the idea of someone showing him a human generosity, but at the same time, she's exploiting him. My rant aside, Chapter 2 also features more beautiful art. For example, the introduction to the Muscle Devil. The devil is attached to another girl, and the face she makes as the creature laughs is simply terrifying. It's one of those several moments that makes me double check if I am reading a shonen or not. Yet there's another thing shown in their interaction. At first, the little girl pleads with Denji to spare the devil's life, causing Denji to think of Pachita. Denji knows he has to kill this devil or it's him he will die. But he hesitates at first. He suggests that the both of them run off together, which appears to be a last-ditch effort to separate the girl from the monster devil. It was enjoyable to see Denji making a connection between his relationship with Pachita and the little girl. That being said, the Muscle Devil seems to be the introduction to the devils of the world. It isn't particularly kind nor doesn't have any desire to make a human suffer. This is known aspects of separates Pachita from the other devils. The chainsaw dog cares for Denji. So far, she only seen Denji as a means to an end. In fact, she further manipulates him in the ending of this chapter by implying she likes him. Chapter 3 starts off with another goal for Denji to get Makima to love him. It's such a simple want for a protagonist, but it's relatable. His want for companionship reminds me when I was younger. This reinforced that he's a normal guy. Personally, his genuine if not personal nature is what draws me to his character. With this in mind, the chapter also brings forth another character, Aki Hawakawa. Like Makima, I was drawn into him by his design. He has this stoic expression at first, coupled with iconic top knocks, which creates a fun silhouette for him. Plus, he's rather stylish, decked out in a suit and sword. When I think of Chainsaw Man, he is the first character that springs into my mind. He is first seen as a bit of a rival to Denji because they are both interested in Makima, with Aki going as far to beat Denji for it. Nonetheless, both men are subtly manipulated by her. For example, Aki agrees to work with Denji despite his obvious disdain because Makima wants him to. Despite this, there are several comedic moments between the two. One such example is Denji kneeing Aki in the crotch. They are rivals, but so foils to one another. Denji is a simple if not normal teenager, while Aki is this serious brooding type who has a reason to slay devils beyond a pretty woman. He's more of a typical main character than Denji, but he serves as his opposite. This is also a chapter that further expands on Makima's personality. Her appearance is pretty, her eyes are unique, but she's capable of such malicious behavior. She reminds me of the audience of this at the end of chapter 3. Yet again saying Denji will be put down like a devil if he ever quits or disobeys orders. Moving on, chapter 4 is what I like to call the Aki and Denji's chapter of volume 1. Both hunters are tasked with killing a fiend, which is something Denji wasn't aware of. Denji remarking that he's never been to school further presents the idea that he's different. He's cut off from society and didn't have the same experiences as his peers. It is semi-comical scene that serves as a vehicle for the introduction to a fiend. Speaking of which, the first fiend is shown a art of work. It's feeding on a bird with insect-like pictures that looks like a beak. The forced perspective of it really convinced me that the fiend was some type of bird. This moment had another one that is iconic to me. Tatsuki Fujimoto does an excellent job in the details. Anyway, this chapter serves as a taste of Aki's backstory. Unlike Denji's, his family was killed by a devil, which further spaces between the two. It's a typical shonen revenge plot, but yet he isn't the main protagonist, which is refreshing to me. There's also more comedy scene in chapter 4. Denji claims that he doesn't transform in order to spare the fiend a painless death, but surely he didn't want to bloody the lewd magazines scattered around. His reaction isn't that of a typical main character, and he doesn't take a knowledge look at the situation. Instead, he merely acts down the fiend and claims that he wants to touch a woman's chest. I rather like how unbothered he was by it. He doesn't experience kinship despite being able to turn into a devil. It's an unlikely reaction, which another reason this manga was such a delightful to read for me. But that isn't all for chapter 4. This chapter introduced a possibly most iconic character to the series, Power. She's a fiend that stands out in the world. Another aspect that seems to be running theme. Her horns combined with her crosshair eyes curates a aesthetic that I love. That being said, her introduction really shows exactly who Power is. Her speech is unique, commanding, and dramatic. With chapter 5, there's more Power and Aki interactions. The fiend come across as another foil to a serious Aki. She's memorable and feral, if not entertaining. Her relationship seems to be strained, to say at least, with Aki. He's petty enough to pair her with Denji, which feels a good jovial touch to a stoic personality. But let's get back to Power. When her ability is first seen, it's rather powerful scene. Bad pun, but you get the idea. The fact she can manipulate her blood into solid objects is a trope I'll never tire of, and Chainsaw Man does it wonderfully. It is also something I would not expect from a character. On the topic of her dynamic power she has with Denji is almost akin to siblings. Once things go south, she immediately blames Denji, which causes them to bicker like children, another moment that adds to the humor, while also making their relationship fun to watch. However, there is a soft side to Power. She looks wild and striking, but she is a cat person. This really shows when she makes a deal with Denji. If he can rescue her cat Meowie, she'll let him touch her chest. Again, we see the comedy of the manga. Denji becomes serious about risking his life to save Meowie, even though seconds before he didn't care. Murderize is just also another fun word. Chapter 6 reminds me of the similarities between Meowie and Power versus Panchita and Denji. Truthfully, Power is a fiend whose only friend is a cat. While Denji isn't a fiend, devil, nor human, he had a friend as a devil. They are two wayward souls. Still, there isn't a lack of world building in this chapter. Devils are rumored to be used for military purposes, which further cements exactly how formidable a devil can be. The theme of this goes further. The more a feared devil names is, the more powerful they are. As a fan of linguistics, this is a tidbit of fun of information. I also believe it will serve as a further plot device for Denji and his chainsaw dog devil. Speaking of devils, I was blown away by Bat Devil's appearance. It's big, it's opposing, it's scary. A devil that looks so monstrous and horrifying is sinister in itself. This level of terror injects a trademark humor. Denji is wrung out by Bat Devil like a towel. Chapter 7 shows a more human Power. In the last chapter, she was cold, if not unfeeling towards Denji, while even caught red-handed trying to feed him to a devil. She calls him foolish for trusting her in the first place, yet this chapter also focuses on the backstory for Power and Meowie. It's a story that mimics Denji's and Panchita, both fiend and devil hunter that have central companionship in their life. This very detail seems to be something that Power notices as well. She seems to be related to him. commenting that it's an awful feeling Denji can't pen Panchita anymore. It's a bit poetic for her character considering right afterwards she is eaten by Bat Devil. But in the face of all this, Denji is stirred on. He too relates to power due to how she must have felt when losing Miaoi. In this raw empathy Denji displays that makes him such an interesting main character. But there is one last thing to note for Chapter 7. Though the volume ends with a 2-page spread of Denji transformed into a chainsaw devil cutting his way through Bat Devil. All in all, I enjoyed this first volume. There was a lot of world building, enriching characters, and a lot of action scenes that mushed in together into an enjoyable story. Not to mention the art is masterful. Honestly, I look forward to reviewing volume 2. And that's all for our video. If you enjoyed the review, please drop a like and subscribe for more. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, peace!